Hello and welcome to episode 13 of Magic the Judging, where I'm going to be bringing you all my stories from Pro Tour Avacyn Restored, which just happened in Barcelona. If you saw any of the online coverage, I hope you enjoyed it. I thoroughly enjoyed the event myself. As a Pro Tour with all of the online coverage going on the whole time, this was my first stab at one of the new style Pro Tours. And I really enjoyed the time I got in the feature match area. I was there for 4 rounds, which, let's be honest, it's more than most of the players get a chance to be in there. Something like 400-ish players in the tournament, and we get 4 matches in the feature match every time. So, yeah, I thought it was good numbers. I got 2 rounds just floating around the feature match area, seeing what was going on, followed by 2 rounds as the spotter, like with the headphones and the microphone on. It was an interesting time, I'll tell you that much. Yes, I'm being told in the chat that Kim had plugged my stream in IRC, and suddenly the viewing numbers went up. That's interesting. Hello, everybody from IRC land. Woo! I must remember to log into IRC a bit more, actually. It's something that I forget. I kind of have Twitter on my desktop the whole time, but not IRC. So somebody is going to have to remind me how I get onto the Judge IRC channel. And having done that, I shall pop in and say thank you to everybody. And in case you're in the chat yourself and you didn't even know there was an IRC channel dedicated to judging, well, there is. And every time I remembered to use it, it's been a fantastic resource. It was actually great for me. As I was a fledgling level 2 judge, I tended to go out to judge PTQ and then go home and kind of be thinking to myself, oh, I did this, and I'm not even sure if that was right. I kind of had to go on like raw instinct for a bit, and still not quite sure. I'd have nights where I'd get home from the tournament and just be like unable to sleep until I joined the IRC channel and typed out what had been going on, and got some lovely, wonderful words of reassurance from whoever happened to be online at the time, and normally being told that I actually got it wrong. But never mind. That's how you learn, isn't it? Making mistakes and learning from them. I'm being what is the /join channel MTG Judge. So if you know anything about IRC, it's /join and then the channel sign is a hash. So /join #MTG Judge is the way for you to get in touch with judges on IRC. Somebody in the chat needs to tell me if you need to be on a particular server, though. I'm being told QuakeNet. QuakeNet is a server that works. So get onto the QuakeNet IRC servers if you know how to, and have a look there. Otherwise, I'm sure somebody will have made some resource somewhere to tell you how to get on to the IRC channels. I'm being told FNet, that's EFNET, FNet is another set of servers that will work. In fact, I've now started a bit of an argument in the chat as to which is the server for MTG Judge. I'm being told it's FNet. FNet's the way to go. So, cool, right. What did I hear about? What did I see? What did I do in Pro Tour Avacyn Restored, or Pro Tour Barcelona as the rest of us called it? Let's take you through some cards. Here's a card. This card is Ashmouth Hound. When it blocks or becomes blocked by a creature, Ashmouth Hound deals 1 damage to that creature. So this is a gentle, actually not amazingly gentle, but it's an introduction to lapsing triggers. Let's start with the basics. Ashmouth Hound has an ability. It has a triggered ability. We know it has a triggered ability because the ability begins with the word whenever. It could have also begun with when or at to be a triggered ability. And we've got a condition that says whenever it blocks or becomes blocked by a creature, and then we find out what it does, it deals 1 damage to that creature. Now, triggers are amazingly tricky things to keep straight in a game of Magic, and I will definitely at some point dedicate an entire stream to the topic of missed triggers because they deserve them. But recently we've come up with some new technology called lapsing triggers, and for lapsing triggers, the idea is that if you forget to do something that's vaguely beneficial to you, It's actually quite well defined for judges what that means. But if you do something that's like vaguely, if you forget a trigger that's vaguely beneficial to you, and you forget that trigger, then you're not going to get it. So there's a few arguments. Well, I say arguments, you say heated discussions, whichever, around cards with triggered abilities, trying to work out whether they're lapsing or not. And this card provoked a bit of discussion in Barcelona itself. So, as an example of what is a lapsing trigger, something that deals damage to a creature is lapsing, especially if it's an opponent's creature, which, if it's your Ashmouth Hound, it's obviously going to be blocked or will block an opponent's creature, because we haven't got that technology of being able to attack yourself yet, and that only exists in silver bordered land. Then this is an ability that will only ever damage an opponent's creature, and because it does that, it would look very much like it would be a lapsing ability. But this is where a little knowledge is a dangerous thing, as the phrase goes. Because yes, if you only looked at the definition of lapsing abilities, you would look at this and go, deals damage, therefore it's lapsing, therefore you can miss it. However, there is an entire clause about miss triggers before you even get that far. And I'm going to hope my internet connection is going to hold out on me whilst I open up a Safari window so that I can actually read from the IPG to you. You know what? In fact, I'm going to look it up on my phone. This is how high tech I am. This is what I was doing on the Pro Tour itself quite a lot, especially for Oracle text. I've got an app called MTG Guide. You get to look at all the different sets that are in there. Avacyn Restored was the one that was used the most. You can kind of scroll down cards and pick out Oracle text, but you can also pick up comprehensive rules and have a look at the rules. So I'm going to look at the IPG here and go to miss triggers so I can just read the text itself. And just before the example section, in my copy this is 2 paragraphs up. I hope that it's the same in the real IPG at the moment. You can always remember to update your documents when you go to a Pro Tour. Pro tip. If a trigger requires no choices to be made and has no effect on the visual representation of the game, then you just assume that the trigger happened. It's actually impossible to forget such a trigger. An invisible, choiceless trigger is impossible to forget. You'll never get a missed trigger penalty for missing one, because you can't miss it. We just assume it happened. Now, it's an interesting interpretation, isn't it? Because obviously it's possible to completely forget that the creature has the ability, and therefore kind of what you forgot was the trigger. But our interpretation of those actions is in fact that you can never, ever miss this trigger. It always happens, the creature always takes 1 damage. Now, if at some point later we realise that the creature should have gone to the graveyard because of the amount of damage it had on it, then what's happened is a game rule violation, and then the policy for that kicks in. Like, do we back up to the point that the error happened, or is too much time elapsed, like too much game time, too much significant game time for us to be able to do that backup? The specific thing about Ashmouth Hound that I learnt here was that when you deal 1 damage to a creature, I thought to myself, is that damage ever visible? And damage itself is a kind of a nefarious concept. You mark damage on a creature, as far as the rules say. Creatures have damage marked on them. And if you play on Magic Online, you might notice a little red number accumulating in the corner of a card to actually show the damage on a creature. But in real life, we don't mark the damage at all. You don't actually pop little red damage markers on it. You don't have a little dice on it to show what damage it had or so on. So the act of marking damage is invisible, and because this one doesn't target it, this trigger deals damage to everything that that blocks it or becomes blocked by. It's a completely invisible thing, and that's why we always assume the damage has happened. Even if the creature has 1 toughness, or has an amount of damage equal to like 1 less than its toughness, so that the 1 damage would actually kill it, the interpretation again here is that the damage is invisible, so the trigger definitely happened, and the damage was definitely taken. even if that would immediately after the trigger resolved in the state-based action check, see episode 1 for state-based actions if you want to brush up on those, even if the state-based action check would immediately afterwards destroy that creature and have it go to the graveyard, we still consider that the trigger happened, the damage was dealt, and there will never be a missed trigger penalty for that, possibly game rule violation. Having a look over the chat for things that everybody's weighing in with, there is the new thing to do with game rule violations about card in the wrong place. I mentioned that you could back up to the point where the creature was supposed to go back into the graveyard, or you could just leave everything exactly as it is. But this is a good example of how to use that new concept in the IPG of, well, we didn't do a backup, but we've definitely got a card in the wrong place. This Ashmouth Hound should definitely have been dead. So we can dead it. We can get rid of it. Should be gone. I'm going to try and look up, whilst I'm talking, the exact text for that bit, using my my little app here. But, yeah. There's a section in the additional remedy part of game rule violation that says, reverse all the actions or none, but with the following exceptions. And one of those exceptions is if an object is in the wrong zone and it's within a turn cycle of the error, put the permanent in the correct zone. So even if you don't do the backup to the point where the Ashmouth Hound was supposed to have dealt its damage, you can still put that creature in the graveyard where it is supposed to be. Cool, excellent. I'm also... okay, quick rewind on the IRC. There is, on the wiki, I thought there would be, wiki.internationalmagicjudges.net, and on there is the MTG Judge FAQ, and there's a section that says how to connect to IRC. I've been asked a question here about what if Ashmouth Hound had Infect or Wither. Now that's a very interesting question. If Ashmouth Hound had Infect, then its trigger would deal damage that would have a visible representation. The Infect would result in either a -1/-1 counter being placed on a creature, or it would result in a player receiving a poison counter, and therefore it would have a visible effect, and we would use entirely different policy. That's not the case here, but I'm hoping you can see the difference between a trigger that can resolve whilst being totally invisible and a trigger that can resolve that does have a visible effect. The classic example for invisible triggers is Exalted. I haven't got a card image to show you right now, but we long ago decided that if you attack with a single creature and you've got some Exalted guys out so that you're going to give additional power and toughness to your guy in a completely invisible and choiceless way, we don't make you go attack with my 2/2, and by the way, these 4 Exalted triggers happen, so I'm actually attacking you with a 6/6. We felt that was rather too much like having to play the game for your opponent. Go, hey, I'm attacking you with this. By the way, it's actually a lot bigger than a hill giant. It's going to be a 6/6 or something. We decided that was too much, and that invisible, choiceless triggers would just happen, and that's part of the idea of the current power and toughness of a creature being derived information. If you look at our communication policy, part of that idea is that I can try and sneak a few bits like that in. Invisible, choiceless triggers, they just happen. That didn't change in the lapsing ability update. Yeah, might do in the future, but it hasn't yet. Moving on. Here's a card that generated a certain amount of controversy during Pro Tour, Cavern of Souls. And here's why it generated some controversy. It's got 2 mana abilities. One of them just generates colourless mana with no particular ability at all, just colourless mana, doesn't do anything. The second mana ability will add a mana of any colour of your any colour to your mana pool. You can only spend the mana to cast a creature spell of the type you chose when Cavern of Souls entered the battlefield. And if you do use that mana, then you will have a spell that can't be countered. Now, what I can tell you for sure is what we ruled in Barcelona. In Barcelona, which I will remind you is a professional rules enforcement level event, so we can be a little more I don't want to say harsh, but that's kind of what I mean. We can be a little more exacting. We can be a little more precise on exactly what we expect players to do. And we made the ruling that if you tapped your Cavern of Souls to cast a creature of the appropriate type, what we ruled was, unless you specifically pointed out which mana ability you were using, we would assume, assuming it were legal, that you were using the colourless ability, and therefore your creature would be counterable, unless you specifically pointed out. There's arguments that go both ways on this one. On the one hand, you would say it's kind of weird. If you cast an appropriate creature with Cavern of Souls and there was no colourless part to the mana, then it's obvious what you're doing. Like, you must be using that one mana ability, so there's definitely no reason to announce it there. It's also it seems quite straightforward for us to assume that you're playing Cavern of Souls correctly, and you can't see I'm doing air quotes around correctly there. It's obvious, isn't it? Why would you use the colourless one when you could have used the coloured one and made it uncounterable? One argument is, well, you might have been trying to just throw it forward, trying to hide the fact that you're using the uncounterable mana ability to bait your opponent into using a counterspell, and you to go, well, actually, you suck. You've just completely wasted the counterspell on an uncounterable thing. Sucks to be you. So, at a professional REL tournament, such as the Pro Tour, the head judge was perfectly within his rights to make a ruling along the lines of, no, if you've got to point this out, to use it. Now, we made several announcements at the Pro Tour itself, once this ruling had been made once, and for consistency's sake, we would definitely follow that ruling throughout the rest of the weekend. We made many announcements to say, no, you must, absolutely must, point out what mana ability you're using. This comes with a huge caveat. No one had really thought about this before. Cavern of Souls, it just hadn't come up. This is one of the things about having a Pro Tour, especially a block-constructed Pro Tour, very close to the release of a set. No one had really thought about this. What happens if you tap a Cavern of Souls and you don't mention it? Well, our policy doesn't really cover this very well. And I'm not just saying that. It's been stated by Toby Elliott, level 5 judge from America, who will claim to be a Brit if you ask him, but jury's still out on that one. He has stated that it's not covered well by current policy. There isn't an official answer. It is under review, and if you're patient enough, you'll find one on the DCI Judge mailing list at some point. Which way do I think it's going to go? I'm not 100% sure. I have a feeling that the Pro Tour ruling will end up being reversed, and that we will assume the other way around. We'll assume that you did use the uncounterable one. Because it doesn't really make sense to assume that the player made the bad play. Well, as much as it doesn't really make sense to assume they made the good play either. This is an example of what higher level judges discuss all the time. Little nuances in policy like this. And if we realise our policies as they exist don't cover situations well enough, when a new policy gets written, then we have a nice big debate over the implications of what we're proposing, and we hope that everything will comes out in the wash and we end up with nice, consistent rulings and everything works. I thought I just done that thing where I have half a thought in my head about Cavern of Souls and I've forgotten it, so I'm just gonna forget about it and move on. What else happened at the Pro Tour? Tamio the Moon Sage happened. Nothing really happened with her abilities, by the way, but I just thought this one was funny. There was a player who had asked for the Oracle text of Tamio the Moon Sage because they didn't understand what it did. Only they were Japanese, so what they wanted was the rules text of Tamio in Japanese. I was certainly surprised to find out that we can do it. There is a way, and I've forgotten exactly how you do it, but if you ask your professional scorekeeper for Oracle text of a card in a particular language, they can go find it for you. The amazing helpfulness of scorekeepers on the Pro Tour there. I believe it's you go into Gatherer itself, and you can hit the I think, do you get a flag in the corner? You can click the flag for the country or the printing that you want. I'm being told there's a language function above the search box. I'm going to try and load that up, see what that looks like while I'm chatting to you. But yes, amazingly, you can get the gatherer text in other languages so that you can give them to the players, which is fantastic. In most places where I've seen something like this work, there is actually just a language button just above the search bar where you can hit like Japanese, save my preferences, and then let's see what happens. I search for Tamio. I search for the name Tamio. I'm always searching for the text. I always get it wrong the first time. And yeah, Tamio comes up in Japanese for you. I have to admit, I'm getting the card text up in English to the side, and I'm pretty sure somebody figured out how to even get that. If I click language, jump to another language, do I get it then? No. Okay, I'm missing. But you do get at least the picture of the card in the correct language. The funnier part of this, I'm seeing actually that if you click it to print it, then you do get the foreign text printed out. So there you go. I learned something there. The funny part about this whole story was that the only reason we even figured out what the player wanted was, well, they were Japanese and they had the card and they were like pointing to it and like and we eventually worked out, oh, you want the oracle text? Yeah, Japanese, something like that. I'm doing a really awkward impression of how that happened. But just another example of the random things you can be asked on the floor of the Pro Tour. Okay, triggers again. This dude, he has a number of triggers. He does stuff when he comes into play. No, when he enters the battlefield. Nearly had you there, nearly had you. When he enters the battlefield, or when he transforms into Huntmaster of the Fells, you get a 2/2 green wolf creature and you gain 2 life. Here's an interesting one, which is that if you put the token into play but forget to gain the life, well, miss trigger policy is definitely not going to apply to you. You didn't miss a trigger here. You applied half of a trigger. And we don't have a part of our policy in the IPG that says applying half of a trigger is a warning or you do this. Either you miss it or you don't. So in this case, you definitely didn't miss it. And applying half of the trigger is definitely going to lead to, well, it's almost certainly going to lead to a game rule violation. Life total changes are slightly tricky, as Kim can attest to. Kim had a situation, I'm just recalling kind of exactly how it went. It was something like a bonfire of the damned off the top that killed a bunch of creatures, but neither player wrote down the life total, even though they knew that the players had been damaged. And later they realised they hadn't written it down. And the ruling there was that, well, the damage has happened, you just forgot to write it down, so we're going to make you write it down now. So this something similar could apply here. But yes, you can't miss half of the trigger. When we go into the when we look at the idea of lapsing abilities, we've got the transform. At the beginning of each upkeep, if no spells were cast last turn, you transform Huntmaster of the Fells. If you forget to do this, you pass the turn without casting a spell, or possibly more likely, your opponent does some things, they activate some abilities or something, and they pass the turn without casting a spell, and you forget to flip it. This isn't a lapsing ability, so it is a mandatory one. You do have to do the flip, which means you will get a miss trigger penalty if you forget it. Your opponent won't. Your opponent won't get any kind of penalty for letting you miss your triggers, even if they are mandatory. It's kind of the point of the new miss trigger policy, is that we never hold the opponent responsible for you remembering your triggers. Or particularly, we never hold them responsible for working out whether your trigger was mandatory or not, because, well, that can lead to some really unfortunate disqualifications where the player thinks they're following policy but has actually made a small mistake. So to make it easy for the players, we say to them, you can never be responsible for your opponent's triggers, but for your own triggers, you can pick up penalties for missing things like the transform. And what will happen is the transform will get put on the stack at the time that the judge comes over and says, "Hey, oh, you missed a trigger here," and it gets transformed at whatever point of the turn you're in there. Yeah, the transform happens, and you end up with a nice, shiny new Ravager of the Fells. Something else that happened quite a lot with the Huntmaster is you would often have two in play. One for one player, one for the other player, and of course they flip at the same time and kill each other. No, they don't. I'm fooling you. I'm not fooling you. You're all intelligent enough to know that's not how it happens. Because you know that there's the stack, and you know when multiple things trigger at the same time, then we choose to put the triggered abilities on the stack in active player, non-active player order. So, the way this most often goes is essentially it's great for you to play the Huntmaster first. I play a Huntmaster, pass the turn. You play the Huntmaster, pass the turn. I play nothing and pass the turn. Your upkeep, triggers happen. Because it's your upkeep, you're active. So your Huntmaster transform goes on the stack first, and mine goes on the stack next. Then, I flip into Ravager, and I get 2 damage to deal to something. I'm going to deal 2 damage to your Huntmaster. Then your ability goes to resolve. You try to transform your Huntmaster, but it's not there anymore because I killed it. So the short way to remember this would be to say whoever got the Huntmaster down first is probably winning. The better way to remember this is that when multiple triggers, triggered abilities, trigger at the same time, or at the very least they're all going to be put on the stack at the same time, which is a subtly different thing to what I just said. They get put on the stack. All of the active players' triggers first, in the order they choose, then the non-active player stacks on top. And because they've stacked on top, theirs will resolve first. Cool. What card have I got up next? Why, oh, stop doing this to me. There we are. Desolate Lighthouse. Why have I got Desolate Lighthouse up? Because it turns out that Desolate Lighthouse is really, really good if you activate the ability, draw a card, and then don't discard a card. But what infraction have you committed if you do this? If you draw the card, but then you don't discard the card? This happened in the feature match area. I forget which round it was in. I don't think it was a camera match. The player drew a card, thought long and hard, presumably, about which card to discard, and then went to play something. They obviously jumped ahead in their own thoughts to what they were going to do after they'd done the discard. They were like, should I discard this card? No, because it'd probably be good to play it. Or if I played it, what should I target? Oh, okay, yes, I'll play it targeting this. Oh no, I haven't actually done the discard yet. And the opponent pointed it out straight away. Obviously, having an extra card in your hand is quite a significant advantage. So it's good to have at least a brief, at the very least, a brief investigation to see, well, is it really just forgotten? Or is there some shadiness here? And it might be tempting for you to think, oh, you've drawn cards and you've got too many cards in your hand, so you've done drawing extra cards. But no, it doesn't fit. The game rule violation here is that you forgot to discard. So I believe this is also... Well, yes, this is... No, is this covered? Is this covered by the card in the wrong zone one? It says an object in the wrong zone, I think. Well, it's actually... It's in the additional remedy section. It's actually a separate exception. It says that if a player forgot to discard or return cards from their hand to another zone, then that player just does so. So, yeah, game rule violation, the card's gone. You can still back up to that point if you wanted to, but even if you don't back up, then that goes. It's not one of the new exceptions. It's actually been there in the rules for game rule violation for some time. But it's just worth remembering that even if you don't back up entirely, there are still some things that we make sure happens, and making sure that you discarded what you were supposed to discard is one of those. I've been reminded in the chat with the Bonfire of the Damned play that there was actually a fantastic bluff that happened at the same time as this forgotten damage. Some people think this is a bit shady, some people think it's amazing. I'm on the side of thinking it's amazing, so I'm going to tell you all about this. So, it might have been miracled, I'm not sure. Bonfire of the Damned happens, some creatures die, and there's a life total change. Except the life total change wasn't noted down. the ruling still was that the damage happened at the appropriate time and you just forgot to write it down. So they get to a point later, some point later in the game, when they realise that the damage hasn't been marked. And I think this is Brad Nelson, he sat there, and he's about that extra bit of damage makes the attack on the board lethal. So he has to get all kind of like, can I re-choose my blocking or something? Can I kind of want the backup, because we want to go back to where the we want to go back to the point where the incorrect damage has happened, because, well, the attack wasn't lethal. Well, at least I didn't think it was lethal based on what I had on my life total pad, and now it is going to be lethal, and this is really awkward. So, like, can we get the backup? The thing is, he's bluffing the whole time. He's got a Restoration Angel in his hand that he can play. In fact, I think I've got Restoration Angel loaded up here. He's got Restoration Angel in play that he can flash in, bounce a guy, make the blocks, and it's actually a blowout win in his hand. But he can't let on to his opponent that he's got this. So he all through the ruling, he has to be all like, "Oh, it's going to be lethal without this." I'm bluffing the fact it's going to be lethal. And when he eventually gets the ruling of like, "No, we're going to take the damage and just correct the life totals now, and you stay exactly where you are in this attack," then he looks all sad about the decision. His opponent passes, and in comes Restoration Angel, and he comes and wins the game. Oh yes, it was something like, you can appeal if you want me to check with the head judge. And I think he was like, no, if that's the ruling, then that's the ruling. And really, it was all just a savage bluff to make that Restoration Angel do what it needed to do. Amazing. I loved it. Whilst I've got Restoration Angel up, the reason I've got this here is it's a simple one. When Restoration Angel enters the battlefield, you may exile target non-angel creature you control. Now, obviously, the reason why the Restoration Angel says non-angel is because we don't want you looping off of the Restoration Angel. You don't want the angel to bounce itself and to put it back into play and then bounce itself and do like combo-y kind of stuff with it, because modern Magic doesn't really work that way apparently, which does make me a sad panda, but never mind. The reason I'm pointing this card out to you, as simple as it seems, is there's a really good example of a card where people will not look at the non-angel part of that ability and remember it. But good judges will look at this card, and one of the first things they'll think, after they've worked out how the card actually works, one of the first things they'll think of is somebody will try and bounce an angel. Now, Restoration Angel being a very well-played card over the weekend, it's something that it almost becomes kind of second nature to you. You see the Restoration Angel, you have a look over the board. What did he bounce? Was it an angel? I think it possibly got missed at some point by various people over the weekend, because it's very easy to miss. It's very easy to forget exactly who is an angel and who's not an angel. Who's an angel? Who's a spirit? Who's a bird? Like, what's going on down there? But yeah, something for you to train your judge senses with. Have a look at a card, work out how players are commonly going to get it wrong, and look out for that. This is also a really good reason why it's great for players to get involved in, for judges to get involved in competitive play. Or play FNM, play weekly, go to pre-releases and like play. Why is it good to play? Because you see what players do, or more importantly, what they don't do, what they do wrongly, what they forget to do. And it just trains you into working out, oh yeah, players know how this all works. They do attack through things really quickly. They do attack with Geist of St. Traft and say take 6. And it's generally understood on both sides that even if you didn't put the angel token into play, that you believe there's an angel there. That's quite a controversial statement, by the way. But if you don't go to play in tournaments, if you don't ever play matches, you'll never see the common shortcuts that players use, the common mistakes that players make, and so on. So yeah, Restoration Angel. That non-angel clause. look out for it. Infinite Reflection is an interesting card, and after the draft portion, we had a player who had 2 of them, and he wanted to ask me, what happens if I've got 2 Infinite Reflections out and a creature comes into play? Now, the interesting thing here is that there were 2 judges in earshot as he was asking these questions. One was me, and one was an incredibly tall judge that you may have met called Gies, Gijsberg, Hukendijk, or something like that. Incredibly tall and Dutch. And we actually picked up 2 different halves of the question. Between us, we got to the right answer for exactly what the player was asking, but it was a bit tricky at the time. Yes, I'm very sorry, Geese, that I completely mangled your name, and I promise never to try that again. I answered the following question. If you've got 2 Infinite Reflections out and a creature comes into play, what does it come into play as a copy of? And I said, well, because non-token creatures that you control will enter the battlefield as a copy of the enchanted creature, what that is a replacement effect. And I shall plug here that I will be covering replacement effects in detail soon. I shall hopefully get them next week. So replacement effects, next week, be here. It's a replacement effect. If there's 2 Infinite Reflections out, what you have are 2 replacement effects that are attempting to modify the same event. So what happens is you pick one, you choose to apply that one, and then you check to see if the second one still applies. And because, well, once you've made the creature into a copy of something, you still have a creature coming into the battlefield, so the other replacement effect still applies. So you apply that one, and the upshot is that the last one you apply wins. What I completely missed, however, is that Infinite Reflection does another thing. When Infinite Reflection enters the battlefield, attached to a creature, each other non-token creature you control becomes a copy of that creature. So if you had Infinite Reflection on one of your guys, and then you put Infinite Reflection on another one of your guys, then all of your guys are going to be copies of the same thing anyway. So when you put a creature into play, whilst, yeah, you've got 2 competing replacement effects and you have to choose which one to apply first, because you've already changed the copyable values of the first guy to be the copyable values of the second guy, it actually doesn't matter which way round you do it, because you're going to end up with the same guy. Of course, I should caveat that. If you've put your Infinite Reflections on your opponent's guys, or you've got them on tokens so that they're not actually affected by each of these abilities, then it is entirely possible to have 2 Infinite Reflections in play, controlled by you, that are on actually different creatures. But the common scenario of having Infinite Reflection on 2 of your own guys is going to be that, well, they're the same guy, so it doesn't actually matter. That was a very interesting ruling to be making, I have to say. What else happened at the Pro Tour? Now I'm just getting into cool story territory, because I've covered most of the controversial things that happened. Angel of Glory's Rise. I was used to seeing it in the constructed portion of the tournament all the time. It was getting reanimated. It was bringing all the human creatures back onto the battlefield. Turns out it's got another ability. It exiles all zombies. Didn't really see that in the constructed at all, because there weren't many zombies facing off against Angel decks anyway. So it gets to round 6, which is the first round after the draft, and it was my final time in the feature match area. And somebody plays Angel of Glory's Rise, and his opponent kind of looks at that and goes, "Oh yeah, that's the one that reanimates all the humans." Looks at the guy's graveyard. There's no humans in there. Okay, you've just played a really expensive 4/6 flyer. Well, hey, it's limited. Doesn't matter. Then he looks down at his own creatures, and he's only got 2 creatures in play, to be fair, so it's not the most amazing stories. And he realises that both of them are zombies. And the board is cleared, and he's actually attacking for the win. Amazing. It was a brilliant little sequence of plays. Just the guy like going, "Oh yeah, you're going to reanimate humans. No, you don't have any. Oh, but I've got zombies. Oh." Loved it. There was also a great moment where this was in the last round of the Swiss, I think, and I've got a feeling that something very similar happened in the top 8 itself. Not that I actually have caught up or watched any of the top 8, but I saw a player looking absolutely dead on the board, hasn't even got a card in hand. He's got to think twice in his graveyard, so he flashes back to think twice at the end of his opponent's turn, and miracles and entreat the angels. Gets 3 angels into play off of that, which is looking okay, but still not fantastic for him. Untaps, draw step, miracles another entreat the angels, another 7 angels. He ends up with 10 angels in play and wins the game off of it. Makes it into the top 8 of the Pro Tour. I believe he was the eventual winner. And his mates, a couple of rows back, just in the spectators area, suddenly start bursting out singing Hallelujah. It was an amazing moment, one of those Pro Tour moments that are absolutely fantastic. Even if after a little while I did have to go over there and go, guys, I realise it's an amazing moment for you and your mates, but there are other matches still happening and they're in the zone, so have to calm it down. I don't think there was any calming them down after the finals, though. This card, together with this card, caused me a bit of a headache. We have Increasing Savagery, puts a whole bunch of +1/+1 counters on things. Tree of Redemption, swapping toughnesses and life totals. You put the two together, you end up with quite an interesting situation. If you've got a Tree of Redemption with a +10/+10 on it because of the counters, then it's got 23 toughness. So let's say at that time your life total is 20. So then you tap the tree to give it 20 toughness and your life total goes to 23. Except now the counters kick in again, so it doesn't have 20 toughness, it's got 30. So when you swap it this time, you take 30 life and it gets the 23 toughness, except it's not, it's 33 toughness, and so on and so on. This was an absolutely amazing game state I saw. One guy had 3 Tree of Redemptions out, one with +5/+5 and 2 with +10/+10. And the other guy, he'd had Garrick out for a while, so we've been making a bunch of Death Touch wolf tokens. There was a whole number of different creatures out. Some of them were paired, because Soul Bond, which turned out to be an absolutely amazing ability, was on the table. And he had Gavney Township. So all of his guys had different amounts of power and toughness and tokens and counters and, oh my god, stuff everywhere. And at some point, he activates Garrick the Veil Cursed abilities to get everyone +5/+5 and trample, I think. Attacks with the team, and the opponent, who's on quite a high life total because of all the tree shenanigans he's been doing, and obviously with 3 trees to block with, goes, how much are you attacking for? Let me just tell you that the calculations required to work out how much he was attacking for were significant, and anyone walking past the match would probably have wanted to give them a slow play warning, apart from the fact that I couldn't work out how much they were attacking for, and I was just having to help them out. I think we should probably have resorted to a calculator at some point. But we got as far as, well, the +5/+5 on this, let's just add up all the counters without even worrying about the power and toughness of the creatures. We got to quite a high number, and eventually the guy with the trees just conceded. Amazing. Absolutely amazing kind of set of plays. Here's something you should not do. I'm not sure if this is going to come out totally well with the resolution of the picture you're about to get, but something you should try to avoid if you are judging the feature match area is looking like this. Wonderful coverage picture of Finkel handshaking with his opponent. This is some point on day one. I don't know exactly when it's happening. The photographer just pounces into place, gets the handshake, and I look like I'm going to kill somebody. Like, I've got this death stare going on. Or that's where I'm dead. It depends exactly which way you look at it. Amusingly, I was actually, right to that moment, I was incredibly impressed with the agility of the photographer, who suddenly leapt from a couple of metres away to get the flash up in the air and the camera down low to the table to get a great angle on the shot at exactly the moment that the handshake was happening. The thing is, it takes another half second or so for that impressed feeling to reach its way to my face and start me smiling. So the reason I'm not even looking at the table is because I'm looking up at this like flying flashlight that's going by to take the picture. But it was great fun being involved in the feature match area and being involved in coverage. It's really strange looking at looking at a game and you've got the headphones on, because all you can hear in the headphones, you get the live coverage. So everything that Brian David Marshall is saying or Rich Hagan's saying is in your ears. You've got to try and pick up on any questions they're asking so that you can tell them what's going on. So when you hear them say, like, is that a Strangleroot Geist in play? I'm there going, confirmed, Strangleroot Geist in play, or something like that. You've got to update on live totals all the time, so you're going like Finkel 16, Turton World 14, or whatever. But you've also got the producers talking. So at various points they're saying like, oh, we're ready to dissolve to camera 2 in 3, 2, 1, dissolve. Okay, dissolve's finished. Camera 2, you're hot. Bum 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 bum. All sorts of noise going on in your head. And to add to all of that, the headphones are really kind of noise cancelling, so you can't hear a thing that's not coming through the headphones. So, like, the players, they look like they're talking to you, and you get a tiny little bit from the players' own microphones, but they're so low down, it's actually really difficult to hear them. So at some point, you get the player looking up at you, expecting you to make some kind of ruling or something, and that you can tell they're talking to you, but you just got no idea what's going on, and you just have to... What? Sorry, what was that? Couldn't hear you. Mental. Really enjoyed it, though. Last couple of things then. Oh, I said I'd been past all the controversies. I hadn't been past all the controversies. There's some interesting ideas out there as to what exactly it means if you start untapping your cards. At least once it was ruled that somebody begun the motion of untapping their cards, and that meant it was in their turn. And when they went, oh, I'm tapping, oh no, I want to activate this ability at the end of your turn, it was ruled at least once that actually, no, you're in your turn because you've begun to untap. Sorry about that. This is another thing that I don't believe our policy covers very well. And I'm hoping that some clarification will be forthcoming in future days, weeks. Because I really like the line to be a bit clearer and a little bit friendlier, a little bit player friendly. Because a lot of players on a casual level will have this idea that, you know, if you didn't take your hands off, you probably aren't committed to the action. And I'll be honest, I'm putting my vote behind that if I were to get a vote on policy, which I don't, but it's an interesting idea. I get the impression that beginning to untap and then realising there was actually something you wanted to do, it doesn't get you any advantage over like being sloppy, and you didn't commit to the untap because you didn't finish doing it. I think you should be able to go back to that end of turn and do something. The flip side to the argument is, have you gained any information from your opponent by trying to do something and realising that they didn't have any kind of response at all? And it could be that it proves tricky enough to delineate the times where you've gained information from the times where you haven't gained information, and that for consistency we should just probably pick the harsh version of no, you started to untap, therefore you untapped. I was quite glad that word about this ruling had spread around on the first day, because on the second day there was a match which involved Gabriel Nassif and Vincent Lemoire, I think, where exactly that happened again. Vincent had the guy who you tap, discard a card to draw a card, and he had been using that at end of turn a lot. And he begins to untap and then goes, oh no, I want to do this, and Gabriel instantly said, like, no, you've untapped, and I just said, like, he's correct, you've begun to untap, you've missed it. They didn't appeal or anything, and so nothing really happened. I didn't really think anything of it because the ruling had been made the previous day, so they just got on with it. As it happened in that game, Vincent dug deep enough to find his Burn at the Stake, which he cast, tapped all the guys, killed Gabriel with no cards left in his library. No, one card left in his library. Mental. Absolutely mental. Love the Pro Tour. Great things happen there. If you ever get the chance to apply to judge at a Pro Tour, just do it. It's utterly amazing, and if you get the chance to do it even once, you'll love it. I also had the privilege of being involved with a couple of kind of more out of tournament things, more external things. First one, on the Sunday, when I wasn't actually down for judging on the Sunday at all. As you can imagine, Sunday, top 8-player tournament, no public events going on, don't need many judges. In fact, only 3 of them are on the schedule, I believe. So I was involved in a level 3 panel, and I'd love to announce that Sergio Perez passed his level 3 with me on the interview panel, interviewing him, trying to get his opinions and views and beliefs of various parts of the judge program and about judging. Well done, Sergio. It was an impressive interview. The level 3 panels have been shortened a bit recently because we have the whole pre-event pre-event checklist? That's not the right word. There's a checklist anyway. There's a checklist of things that level 3 candidates have to mark off. They have to prove how they've done it. There's a pre-interview evaluation that happens. I like that. Pre-interview evaluation would be PI if you put that as an acronym. I like that. Even if that's not the right one, that's what I'm going to call it from now. So a lot of the evaluation happens in the weeks leading up to your interview, and because the whole process is more structured, then there's less to go over in the actual panel, and the panel interview itself will just be focused on those bits that I identified, like, no, we need to push you here, here and here, just to try and see if those weaknesses really exist or if you've shored them up in the meantime. This was a slightly abbreviated version for Sergio. We didn't have too much time to get get everything out in the open beforehand, so he did actually end up with a panel that took 3 hours. I'll be honest, we took 3 hours and it felt too long, and I'm kind of sorry to have put him through quite that much. But he passed, and so everything's good. And the only downside of it being a 3-hour panel was that I missed my flight home and had to buy another ticket. But never mind. That was my fault for heading to the wrong terminal twice. That was a bit of a disaster, really. But never mind. The other external thing, and I'm really glad that she's here in the chat right now, so that you can all congratulate her live, as it were, was Kim Warren was announced as the next person to take on the daunting task of being the regional coordinator for UK, Ireland and South Africa. So I hope everyone in the chat room is going to congratulate Kim, and I get to see all sorts of beautiful sentiments scrolling up the screen as I'm saying this. I literally can't think of anyone better to take on the role right now. I wish you, Kim, every luck getting the region going. It's an absolutely awesome decision for those who had the decision to make. Shortest UK regional coordinator ever? Yes, definitely. Kim will be my 3rd regional coordinator that I've worked for. Obviously, Nick Sefton did a whole bunch of amazing work getting the judge community in the UK going. For some time, he was the only level 3 in the UK community. Now there's 6 of us to go around, so we're doing pretty well on level 3s. Then Glenn White took over. He did some amazing work as regional coordinator. Absolutely fantastic guy to judge with as well. Really energetic. His work is heading over into the TO arena now. He's very interested in tournament organising. He's got a company to run, and wish him every success in that. It has meant that he had less time to devote to regional coordinating, so it did need to go on to someone else, and I'm absolutely ecstatic that someone is Kim. So yeah, again, well done. Really looking forward to see what you do over the next couple of months. Kalsari Kani, on the other hand, is what I'll be doing for the rest of the week. No, it's not true. Just a nod to the Finnish community there. If anybody knows what that means, then just keep it to yourself. Cool. Well, so that was Pro Tour Avacyn Restored, or Pro Tour Barcelona, depending on how you prefer to call it. I had some fantastic times there. I really enjoyed the rulings I had to make, the coverage I got to see, the people I got to see, the food. Oh my God, the food was amazing. Barcelona, you were amazing. I really enjoyed you. That doesn't sound too dodgy, does it? No, I'm going to go with it anyway. So, next week on episode 14 will be replacement effects at the request of Christian Gavrilovic. I would like to remind you that if you are a level 2 who's struggling with certain parts of the rules, or even if you're a level 1 and can identify a particular set of rules that you'd like me to go over, or you have like level 1 or level 2 mentees that are struggling with a particular area of the rules, get your requests in and I'll prepare a stream and we'll see what we can do. This is an example of one. Christian Gavrilovic asked for replacement effects, so that's what I'm going to do. Shortly, I will declare myself done with the rules and move on to policy documents. I will be starting with judging at regular and then moving on to sections of the IPG. I promise an entire stream dedicated to missed triggers for one of those things. And yeah, we'll see where the policy road takes us. So, I'm done. I'm done for the week. And actually finish recording within the hour for once. Amazing. I'm not going to waffle on for very much longer, otherwise I will make myself into a liar. So thank you all for watching, and please tune in next week. See you then. Bye bye.